these were made as labours of love by the artists, as just great bits of porcelain. But now they're expensive treasures too. The whole concept just works together so well.
These four here, I haven't got a clue where those are dug up. These two were from a lake in Shropshire.
Lake in Shropshire. So, did you know who found them?
They were my dad's. So he's a bottle digger. Well, he was a bottle digger.
The curious thing about bottles, it's one of the odd anomalies in antiques that for these, the worse condition they're in, the more valuable. Collectors actually love them when they're all decomposing and almost falling to bits, rather than the glasses that look clean, because I suppose when they are this age, it's nice to think that they have survived. The purpose of these bottles were to serve wine rather than to store wine. They were used mostly in public houses and in grand houses to fill the wine from the cask, and then you would serve a bottle at table. They really were a great English invention. In the 17th century, they started to make this very dark bottle glass, and that was really very much heavier, stronger than other countries had made, and it became a new thing. They replaced the pottery bottles previously used, and everybody wanted their wine served in glass bottles. And we've got a bottle here, the shape, the tall, thin neck, and rather squat onion bottle, known as a globe and shaft, is about the earliest type, and this dates back to the middle of the 17th century. We're looking about 1660. And gradually the shape changed to a little bit more squat. We find that this shape, which dates from about 1675, 1680, and here you've got the seals on the front. Normally these seals were the signs of the inns and taverns where they were used. Here you've got what looks like a lion, so I guess it was perhaps used in a public house called the Red Lion or Golden Lion or something like that. Gradually the onion shape developed. This is the classic onion, obviously named, and these came in at the beginning of the 18th century. They have a lovely high kick-in base, which allows more area for the wine to come into contact with the glass, and it cools it. You place these into a bucket of ice or cold water to cool the wine, and the shape is now becoming more practical for that purpose. And then gradually they became a little bit taller, and these would date from 1730, 1740, possibly up to the 1750, getting more and more taller, gradually coming into the wine bottle shapes we know today. The value in these depends on precisely how early. The earlier they are, the more valuable. And the presence of a seal like this adds to the value enormously. I mean, this type are very surprisingly expensive, but the problem with this one is he found the neck and the base separately.
Yes, he said he found it in two pieces, and he put it you know.
He's done it nicely. One's seen that the base is deteriorated separately to the top, and you've got the iridescent decomposing there in a different way. So had it been a perfect bottle to find, then you'd be looking at about £1,500, even 2,000. Broken is still worth 300 or 400. This one, being sealed from this period, even with damage, you're looking at £500. And these are found in much larger numbers. A nice onion bottle like this will cost you about £100 today. And I think they're great bottles to hold. And going down to about £60 for later ones. So if you can go back to the lake where he got these, wonders how many more down there. Find a few more of these in good condition. They'll be £1,000 each while we're going for a dive.
Lovely, thank you.
It's really crucial to work out precisely when this bracelet was put together. And I've just been talking with our jewellery expert, John Benjamin, and he confirms that the gold mounts with the fittings and the composition, which is a very classical shape, would have been made in the Georgian period. It dates from the end of the 18th century, or perhaps around about 1800. And that's really very important because the pieces of glass which it's formed of contain decorative techniques which weren't reinvented by the Venetians until the middle of the 19th century. Prior to that, they hadn't been made since Roman times. So what we're looking at is a collection of fragments of Roman glass mounted together at the end of the 18th century. So, do you know a part of its history at all?
I don't really. All I really know is the fact that it was left to me by my mother, and prior to that, I believe it was given to my mother by an old aunt of hers. But apart from that, I would love to know its history.
It was just come down in the family as a little piece of jewellery. I mean, when the pieces of glass were discovered, they would have come from archaeological excavations as fragments of wonderful pieces of Roman glass, bowls, jugs and vessels. When they were found, they certainly didn't look like this. When we turned the back over, it shows the unpolished surface. Here is how the glass would have looked. These little fragments are in their raw state. By being in the ground, glass decomposes and develops a silvery iridescence. As a result, the collectors polished them again, and by repolishing, as the Romans had done originally, the colours inside the glass come out, and these are the colours from, they all date from round about the 1st century AD. So we're going back to almost 2 millenniums, I suppose, ago. And to think how they did it. I mean, the techniques here really were wonderful methods of making glass. The patterns, they contain, well, there's this one here, that's millefiori, individual canes. You've all seen the glass paperweights, which contain little pieces of rods of glass, like coloured sticks of rock, assembled together. Here they've made little patterns in the glass and fitted them around. That would have probably been a whole bowl, maybe that pattern all over it. Next to it, even more remarkable, we've got latticino. This is individual twists, little candy cane twists of one colour glass set within clear. So the yellow glass twisted up and laid down side by side and remelted into the side of a bowl or a jug. And so many techniques which became forgotten. No one knew how they were doing it. The Romans were able to practice so many techniques that we always think of as Victorian ideas because no one knew until then how it was done. Here, right at the end, that last piece contains, there's a flower head and other patterns of little flowers and beads, all made of coloured glass. They would have rolled that little flower in one coloured glass petals and then melted it all in together to form the patterns. And these would have been marvellous, extremely valuable treasures in their day. The complete bowls were really quite wonderful. Very few survive in intact condition. A few have come from excavations complete. They were normally repolished and put on display in the museums, but collectors were glad to hold just fragments of them because even the little pieces are scarce, and they show the technology that the Roman glassmakers invented, and then the techniques became lost for a long, long time. I mean, these pieces, which were assembled, they were shaped to fit into a nice piece of jewellery, and here a collector has had this made at a time when there was a great deal of interest in the Roman world. The excavations at Pompeii had been working. Maybe some of these fragments had come from excavations like that. Who knows, this might have been part of a suite of a matching necklace and another bracelet once. That's often how these came in the 18th century. To think the pieces are even older, and we've got a very valuable piece of jewellery. Because it has value for two reasons. The glass pieces are precious. Even fragments of these rare glass are valuable because complete bowls are worth hundreds of thousands of pounds. They just don't exist. Very rarely come on the market. Even fragments are worth hundreds of pounds each. Some of these pieces alone can be worth many hundreds of pounds. Adding those up together, we've got a fair bit, and mounted in such a wonderful way in a period piece of jewellery which is so smart. Somewhere perhaps 6,000 to 10,000 pounds.
Heavens.
It's just lovely.
It's beautiful. I definitely won't wear it now.
Tell me about the piece itself. Do you know about it?
Well, I've had it for about 20 years. It belonged to an aunt of mine. She had it, I don't know for how long, I suppose again about 20 years. It was given to her by a friend and admirer. How long it had been in his family, I don't know.
It just goes back as long as, beyond what you can remember anyway.
Absolutely, yes. Mm-hmm.
With the factory mark, Bermontoft's Faience, grand-sounding name, used by the Leeds Fireclay Company. Mm-hmm. They started as an architectural firm making glazed bricks and pieces for buildings, and they got into the great Victorian craze of making art pottery, particularly vases and models of animals in bright-coloured glazes. Mm-hmm. And then around 1880s, about 1886, 1887, they employed a very skillful decorator to do the Anglo-Persian style, as they advertised it. And this is the mark of the painter, a little monogram here, which is taken a bit an L and a K, and that mark appears on all the factory's pieces in this wonderful style. But the sad thing is, we don't know who it belongs to. The mark was clearly someone very skilled who understood high Victorian taste of the time, but we don't know their name at all, so remains anonymous. And because of that, it perhaps gets condemned a bit as a copy of the better-known William de Morgan pottery.
Yes, I've heard of that.
You know, the great designs of the time. And de Morgan's pieces, inspired by the same Islamic art, were the height of fashion in the 1880s, shown in great exhibitions in London. And the Leeds factory felt, well, we can do just as well.
Yes.
And I think in many ways they did. When you've got the thought behind the design, it really works so well. The way these snakes coil around, and the background with the little plants just growing up inside there. It's probably not yet in the same level as William de Morgan, who will always be the great leader of the field. But even a good old Bermontoft piece is certainly going to be, I would think, £4,000 or £5,000.
Oh, really? That's amazing.
I mean, we've got a sort of range of pieces here. I mean, this is the most unusual clock. Where did this one come from?
Well, that was given to my grandparents on the occasion of their marriage in January 1907.
Oh, right. Well, we can probably sort of get quite close to it by looking at the year code. Worcester put a code on all their pieces. We've got the mark underneath, which is somewhat smudged there, counting the dots, 12, 13, 12. We've got 1905 it was made.
Oh.
So in stock a year or two, given in that occasion. Most unusual to get porcelain clocks, and a little painted scene there. Not signed by the artist, but I think that's probably the work of William Hawkins, a great flower painter.
To know.
I mean, I say one feels with the porcelain painters and the artists at Worcester that you always know them because living in Worcester myself, as I did, their families are all around. And Dad introduced me to so many of the painters and people whose artists and signed on your pieces of porcelain. Are some of these by your family members?
Yes. My grandmother was a Fildes. Her maiden name was Fildes. And Madge Fildes, who worked at the Porcelain Works for a short while, was her niece. And I feel very privileged to have two pieces that were actually painted by her. Probably not of great value, but they are to the members of my family.
Well, they become special pieces, aren't they?
Yes.
I mean, the great painter of roses particularly,
Yes.
and flowers, and that sort of atmospheric shaded background
Yes.
which Worcester so specialised in.
Yes.
But that's the nice thing. And then your family have been collecting and buying pieces after that?
My father particularly had a great love of Worcester china, and this is part of what he has left to me.
Did he know the painters himself?
I'm not sure whether my father actually knew, but certainly my grandfather, who was a well-known character in Worcester, he certainly knew Harry Davis and the Stintons.
Right, and we can see their work here. I mean, of course, Harry Davis means a lot to my family because Dad knew him very well. I was just a very young boy. I was 9 years old when I met Harry Davis and would spend hours as a boy watching him paint. And I can see the magic name Harry Davis on this one. You've got some very unusual pieces. To get this subject, he's famous really for his French-style landscapes and sheep. Here you've got a little cottage scene.
Yes.
I mean, that's very unusual to find. What gorgeous flowers growing up there. You can imagine yourself sitting by the cottage, as of course Harry would have done. He did little sketches and watercolours of local scenes. Is that a local building, do you know?
I would think it's somewhere around Worcester, but I just feel that the flowers look as if they're almost growing. They come out as if they're alive. Absolutely amazing.
I mean, that's the magic of porcelain. Somehow the colours are sealed there and they never change. We're looking at them now as they were painted. And a great big vase there by another marvellous artist. There's the work of Charley Baldwyn. Bird lover through and through, and sweeping swans growing around there. I mean, nowadays collectors are of course keen on wares, and the value goes very much by who painted them. And a little vase by Madge Files will be £250. A cup and saucer about 100, so not little bad. But moving up in the scale of the artist's work, your clock, which was their wedding present clock, family piece, is going to be, for its rarity alone, probably £800, £1,000. Then moving up to the top artists, and Harry Davis there on a vase and cover with an unusual scene. I suppose it's going to be £5,000.
Pardon?
£5,000 now for Harry Davis vase. The painters themselves would have been shocked at these values. He'd never earned that in his life, poor old Harry. But here, a vase that size, in that quality, you're probably £8,000.
Pardon?
And a vase by Charley Baldwyn is going to be £7,000.
Goodness me.
Now, I mean, it makes you think, really, when these were made as labours of love by the artists, as just great bits of porcelain, but now they're expensive treasures too. Being so close to Worcester today, I hoped I'd see some nice Worcester porcelain, but you've brought along a really very special piece, and the likes of which I've never seen before. Oh, tell me about it.
Well, it's made by the Grangers, in George Granger's time, and it's come down through the family. In fact, I've just established that George Granger was my great-great-grandfather.
Grangers were one of the great porcelain makers in Worcester.
Yes.
I mean, here's the name on the back, G. Granger and Co. Worcester. And they were the other Worcester factory, the smaller factory, the other side of the city. And Paul Granger is generally thought of as being nothing on the same league as the great Royal Worcester factory. But here is a piece that shows just how good Granger could be.
We think it was made about 1840, and it's been handed down generation and loved. And the story that my mother told me was that it's an extra from a set that was made for Queen Victoria to give the Tsar. But we haven't been able to corroborate this. In fact, we approached the Worcester Museum, who had no record of it.
Yes. And the Hermitage in Russia.
Oh, right, so you've been researching all around.
And the Royal Collection.
And the Royal Collection also had no record.
Looking at the piece, it has, of course, proud in the middle. There, the arms of Queen Victoria. And in the panels around the border, you've got the different royal palaces. You've got Windsor Castle there.
Yes.
That must be Buckingham Palace. And
I think so.
There were the little figures, charming figures in the foreground there. And there we've got the pavilion at Brighton.
Are they hand-painted?
Beautifully hand-painted.
We've looked at it through magnifying glass, and it's amazing.
The gilding there, this amazing rays and barbs, I mean, it's just unlike any other English royal services. All the factories made pieces for Queen Victoria and for William IV beforehand, but this is so much more splendid, more eccentric than that. We know that there were pieces made for the Queen Victoria and services which went back and forward between England and Russia, but this never went. This stayed in the family. So is this some sort of sample? I mean, with this quality, why didn't they get the order, I wonder? But what I've never seen before on Granger or any other factories is these model flowers stuck on the plates in addition. The little roses are each made by hand and stuck on.
Yes, you couldn't eat off of it, could you?
Not very easily. Could you imagine even in a royal palace trying to carve your feet off there? Maybe it was just a bit too silly. They've gone over the top, and the order wasn't placed. How do you value a royal plate in a family like that? Have you thought about it?
No.
Well, we thought, but we don't know.
It's not even insured.
I mean, maybe £4,000.
Oh, thank you.
Excellent.
Well, basically, they're my mother-in-law's, which I think she got hold of about 35 years ago. She actually paid £160 for them.
Right. The work of Charley Baldwyn, the Royal Worcester factory.
Yes.
And Charley Baldwyn specialised in swans. I mean, during his career, he painted many hundreds of vases, usually with swans flying around the vases. What makes these so unusual is the swans are swimming. And that really does make them different. And it'll be interesting to see just what date they were painted. They'll have a mark on the bottom for the factory year code.
Right.
The year mark, little dots around the Worcester factory mark. And here this one's got 8 dots. That makes it 1899.
1899.
And that is that makes sense because that's quite early for this decoration. Most of Charley Baldwyn's swan vases are painted between 1900 and 1904. And they're a very formal pattern, but they're not very detailed. These are, well, really much more real swans, but they look more fluffy. And that's, I think, very typical of the early work of Charley Baldwyn. He did the whole lot, all the decoration. He will have signed them. His signature is just there, neatly painted, C. Baldwyn. And well, not ignore the vases themselves. These modelling of the handles by James Hadley. I mean, the whole concept just works together so well. I mean, it was a new, light, airy style of decoration which Worcester was just working out, and they were to become enormously popular.
Right.
Both at the time and indeed now. So we're going to look at, say, £15,000 perhaps even £20,000.
Really? Gosh, you'll be happy with that. That's great. Really good.